Hi folks, we're Tacitus today at your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue of illegal aliens, illegals flooding across the southern United States border with Mexico. Something that we've all seen, I think, in the images is these mostly overweight, but very, very well fed and well nourished, well dressed. You know, they're wearing new, clean clothes. They've got expensive brand name joggers and so on. And so, how did they travel? Because on average, they're traveling. But this is assuming they're coming from South America, by the way. On average, they're traveling over 4,000 kilometers. You know, give or take 3,000 miles to get to the US border. You know, some even longer than that, depending on where they come from. So, how are they doing that? How are they able to arrive in such pristine condition with brand new clothes and again looking particularly well fed? Now, some of them claim, rather fancifully, I think, that they've actually walked the entire 4,000 kilometers. They walked the whole way every day, you know, traveling 20 kilometers in that heat. And they've arrived there. They're desperate. They're escaping this, or only want a better life, that. And, you know, they've got all the catchphrases that they've been trained to regurgitate. But you know, if I walked 4,000 kilometers, I'd be looking very wiry. There wouldn't be an ounce of fat on me if I'd walked, you know, given every day they're covering 20 kilometers. Now, you know, in order to maintain my quite above average level of fitness, you know, I'm doing sort of, say, 5 kilometers of power walking a day, and you know, I do other things like bike riding, bicycle riding, that sort of stuff. But I don't look anything like those people who are quite a bit younger than me. And they're waddling along looking like they've been stuffing their face full of some very fatty foods non-stop. There's no way they've walked 4,000 kilometers, 20 kilometers. There is just no way. And if you look up, you're hard to find even one person in the group as the camera pans that look like they've even walked around the block, let alone 4,000 kilometers. So what's going on here? Why do people who are desperate have left everything behind? They've got nothing. They're truly desperate, and yet they arrive at the border in, again, you know, brand name, clean clothes. You know, they're not the cheap stuff that Walmart would throw out. I mean, again, we're looking at brand name clothes, and you know, joggers. If I go to the shop to buy some of the joggers there, you know, I've got to pay $150 for them. Yet these people are getting them for free. And again, they're not dehydrated. They're, you know, all the signs of dehydration just aren't there. Even the lowest of the low peasants that are clearly rural farming peasants, even they are in pretty decent shape. And they would have had a life of you know, relative hardship at least. So I calculated, just did a sort of back of the envelope type calculation here, but did a calculation on what would be the cost of getting these people from, say, the time they enter the southern tip of the Mexican border until they get to the border with the United States, and what would be the cost of feeding them. And I'll assume communal kitchens and things like that, but not all of them are. They're getting individual food parcels, so it's not all. So that you can imagine a cost of a communal food kitchen would drive down the per head cost of food. But these people clearly are getting 3 meals a day. You're not that corpulent if you're walking that much. And I don't believe they've walked as far as they claim, or as much as they've claimed. They're obviously getting transport from point to point. But even then, they're looking particularly well fed. So the calorie intake is obviously well above the maximum required to keep body together. And again, they've got plenty of liquids. There's no dehydrated people that I can see. So what is the cost of getting them from the time they enter the southern border of Mexico to the time they get to the number of days? So looking at the number of days that they claim they've been on the road, which I treat with some suspicion incidentally, but looking at the number of days, then it would cost close to $5,000. And that isn't fully accounting for all the distribution and storage. For example, if you're going to give tens of thousands of people bottles of water, you need quite a large storage facility. So the bottled water has to be brought in, has to be deposited there. That someone's got to pay for that storage, and then that has to be distributed. Are these all volunteers? Are they all paid? It looks like they're paid. NGOs are paying these people to do it, and the NGO workers are staying in the hotels. they're not living on the street. So the infrastructure on cost I haven't counted. So approximately $5,000 to get people from the southern border to the Mexican southern border to the US border, which is at the very north end of Mexico. Now, $5,000 times the amount of people. This assumes, of course, they've all we're only accounting the time they've come into Mexico. If they've come from further afield, then there are additional costs there. And so $5,000. Now, just consider this. Say an equivalent thing. Somebody, I've got to move from the east coast of Australia to the west coast, which is 4,000 plus kilometers, 4,500. So approximately the same distance. Well, I've got to cross some temperate type rainforests, a lot of desert scrubland, red dirt as far as the eye can see. All that sort of stuff. I've got to cover all that distance. And there's not much in the way of infrastructure along the way. The gaps from one point to the other are over 100 kilometers. So, and then even then, it would only be a small sort of station where they couldn't handle thousands of people moving along. So, if I had to do a journey like that with only what I could carry, I didn't have like a motor vehicle or something. I'm just walking. Then I would very quickly realize that in order to make the journey, I'd have to carry with me many pairs of shoes, multiple changes of clothes. Would there be facility to wash clothes in places? The amount of food and water I had to carry, because it's very hot going across there, the amount of food and water I had to carry would be, it would be easily a 35 to 40 kilogram pack I'd have to carry across that distance every day. So, and I would look at that and say, well, that's simply not feasible. It can't be done. So now I don't know if all these people would go into the level of detail that someone like myself might, but nonetheless, it's a long journey which requires vast resources to undertake. Now, given that I couldn't organise those resources or I couldn't be sure they'd be there, it would be an exceptionally high risk journey. The chances are very high that I would die along the way. Die of dehydration and out in the desert and going crazy in the sun and so on. So I just wouldn't attempt. The risk would be so high, I just wouldn't attempt it. Now let's consider you've got young children. Then the risk is exponential. I mean, it's nuclear. Nuclear is the level of risk, and yet these people are attempting these journeys with young children. They all arrive at the other end in clean clothes, looking very well fed, and so on. So the amount of support they're getting along the way, they have to know that support is there. Otherwise, they wouldn't attempt the journey. They have to know it's there. They have to know that they're going to be looked after with food, water, clothing, and everything else they need. Medical care. Now, they're also getting free medical care. I haven't costed that in. At these places they stop at Mexico, there are medical, qualified medical personnel there to give them medical care. In some places, they're even getting foot massages because they got those poor aching sore feet from all that walking they're supposedly doing that somehow doesn't burn off any of the calories. Now, if we just put this in context, the NGO, United Nations mass people movement infrastructure all across Mexico to get these people moving from the south to the north. The infrastructure is massive. And if you look at the amount of people that are moved through Mexico and the cost of supporting them, then we're talking not millions, or we're talking billions. I would conservatively estimate that somewhere around 2 to 3 billion per year, and this is a minimum. Again, I'm not even costing in the infrastructure to put it all in place, but somewhere between $2 to $3 billion a year is being spent on moving these people from the southern tip of Mexico to the US border. Now, where's that money coming from? Who's paying for all this? These are organisations, NGOs, that are aiding aggressively, aiding and abetting and making possible the mass movement of illiterate third world peasants into the first world, in this case, the United States. And without this infrastructure, without this help and assistance, these people would have no chance, not even a snowball's chance of making that journey or even attempting it. So not only is that infrastructure in place there to help them, food, water, clothing, all that sort of stuff, transport, but there are agitators actively going around these peasant villages in South America saying, hey, guess what? You can go to America and we'll pay for everything to help you get there. It's a very low risk journey and we'll pay for everything. It won't cost you a cent. It'll be, in the villages they come from, they're getting paid. Well, the cost of getting them from A to B is the equivalent of maybe 3 years' wages in the places where they live, these rural peasant villages. So I just want to sort of convey the massive extent of the infrastructure and how that's put in place, along with agitators and stirrers and agents going around to the villages saying, hey, go on, do this. Well, which isn't just happening in South America, it's happening in Africa and Pakistan and India and all these sort of places. Now, in my view, these NGOs are aggressively assisting these people break the law, knowingly doing so, premeditated assistance. And I would hope that the incoming Trump administration takes swift and decisive legal action against these groups for aiding and abetting such law breaking, and sues the living crap out of them. That's my hope. You've been fantastic today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.